Now, if you've ever felt like you're falling behind and you're afraid that there's no room left at the top, this episode is for you. Today's question comes from Britt, and she writes, "Hi, Marie. Let me first say how much I adore you and your insight. You're genuine and loving, and it translates through everything you do. Thank you. I recently started an online interior design business, and it's getting off the ground slower than I hoped. I'm watching friends succeed in similar business models quickly and easily. So here's my question. How does one not become frustrated and jealous of those who are achieving the things you so desperately want? I want to be happy for them, but part of me feels like there are limited spots on the podium. Thanks so much. Love, Britt." Britt, this is a great question. Now, I want you to know something. I have never met one creative entrepreneur, present company included, who hasn't felt frustrated or upset when they feel like other people are just zooming past them. So you are not alone. But the short answer here is no, there are not limited spots on the podium. We do not live in a zero-sum world, and there is more than enough opportunity to go around for everyone. However, the comparison impulse is really what's crushing you here. It's addictive and it's deadly, and it will destroy your business and your happiness if you let it. So first and most importantly, my friend, put down the Comparschlager. Britt, you have got to go cold turkey. People say comparison is the thief of joy. I've called it the hamburglar of happiness. But when it comes to your small business, it gets even more dire because comparison really is the robber of results, the pillager of profits, the pickpocket of prosperity. And those are three things that every entrepreneur needs in order to survive.
All right, ma'am. So when did you notice your prosperity was missing?
Did you see the guy who took your prosperity?
We've had a lot of complaints of comparison work in this neighborhood.
Yeah, sounds like comparison again.
We'll keep an eye out for you, though.
This is serious, Britt, because every time you do a shot of Comparschlager, you are slowly killing any chance your small business has of succeeding. You know, most people don't realize it, but they actually waste hours every single day comparing themselves to others. And the only way to stop is by cutting yourself off. So take a look at your habits. Are you following certain people on social media? Are you constantly checking certain websites and then feeling like crap after? Identify the specific behavior patterns that just trigger you and stop it. Here's a hint. Don't rely on willpower. Unfollow people you compare yourself to on social media if that's one of your vices. Even better, take those apps off your damn phone, woman. Do the equivalent on your laptop too. So you can Google free website blocker and you'll find loads of options that prevent you from visiting sites that just waste your time. Now, once that's done, the very best remedy for feeling behind is getting ahead. Now, I went ahead and did a little research on you, Britt, to learn more about you and your business. And it's clear by your testimonials that you are so good at what you do. And I also love how much you love animals. But there are some changes I suggest you consider that will help just create a better user experience for your customers and ideally get you more clients. So let's take a look. All right, first thing, Britt, you need a clear tagline and a headline that really tells us what you do. We don't even know what you offer until we scroll way down. Simple solutions for home you'll love. I mean, that could be stools, it could be countertops, it could be a store that sells finishes. It could be software that helps you plot out a room. So first, I'd suggest swapping out this tagline in the upper left corner from simple solutions for a home you'll love to affordable interior design services. Next, you should have a clear headline on this big hero image and make sure the headline is above the fold. Why, you may be asking? Well, because you have about 3 seconds or less when someone comes to your website in order for them to decide whether you can help them solve their problem or not. Remember this, if you confuse people, you lose people. Now, often the best headlines come directly from the mouths of our customers, and I found this great headline way down at the bottom of your site that explains exactly what you do. Professional design on a DIY budget. Now, down the road, you may not want to focus on budget, but for now, that seems to be the promise you make and a point of differentiation for your business. It is way more specific than simple solutions, so it's much better. All right, let's move on. The next thing I want you to do is simplify. There's a lot happening on your homepage, and as a potential customer, I'm not sure exactly where to look or what to click. One quick fix: eliminate social media from your homepage. Here's why. If you're lucky enough to get someone to your website, do not send that traffic away to the distraction mecca of social media. You're doing it 3 times here on your homepage, so let's remove those immediately. Also, I think your navigation could be simpler and more customer focused. So for example, I'd suggest losing the how it works from your navigation and simply going with services, which is crystal clear to anyone who might want to hire you. And you can easily make 3 drop downs for each of what appear to be your core services: virtual interior design, in-person interior design, and home staging for realtors or sellers. I'd also suggest removing home and shop from your top navigation and recommend changing the copy from get in touch to contact. People know they can always click on your logo to go back home. Okay, next up, testimonials. So, Britt, your success stories are great. However, right now they scroll by way too fast. I can't even read them before they go on to the next one. And I think they're way too far down on the page. So I'd love you to move them up, perhaps underneath your hero image, and either slow them way down or allow your user to control the scroll so they can take the time and really read what people have to say about your good work. Next, let's take a look at your portfolio. So this is an area where there's a lot of opportunity for growth and for you to really showcase your amazing work. So first up, I would not suggest that the first image on your portfolio page be a quote card. It needs to be a really great, high-quality photo of an inspiring interior that you help pull together, or your best before and after. Now, another challenge in this section: the copy stays the same as I scroll, which is a missed opportunity to describe each photo and how you helped your client create the results they wanted. And the functionality of scrolling through is a little bit confusing, as it is right now. This is an area where I think it would be helpful to look at other design sites and take inspiration from how they lay out really clear before and after photos. Britt, again, it is clear from your testimonials and from your pictures that you're really talented and so good at what you do. And trust me, I know how much work it takes to get any website up. So congrats on all you've done so far. Hopefully, these suggestions will help you continue to evolve and grow your business.
Tell us about the happiness of pursuit, finding the quest that will bring purpose to your life. So what inspired you to write this new book?
Okay, so since we last talked, I had been wrapping up a personal project. It was a quest to visit every country in the world. We might have even talked about it a little bit last time. I'd been working on it for about 8 years or so then. So it was a 10-year quest in total. I just kind of came to the end of it last year. And it was something that was initially just a personal project. It was something that I believed in for myself, and I loved travel, and I loved the value of exploration and discovery. And so as I pursued this quest, I knew I wanted to write something about it. But fortunately, I didn't just write a book about myself. I didn't just write a travel memoir, because that would be kind of boring. So all along the way, I was meeting lots of interesting, remarkable people who were all pursuing a quest or some kind of adventure of their own. And I wanted to know, why did they do it? And what lessons did they learn along the way? And how were they changed through the process? What did they sacrifice or give up in order to pursue it? And why bother? You know, what can the rest of us learn about quests? And then lastly, it's not really meant to be a sociological study. It's not just like a collection of like, this person did this and this person did this, blah, blah. The book actually has a clear message, and the message is that a quest can improve your life. A quest can actually bring purpose and meaning to your life too.
I love it. So let me ask you this. Were you, as a young person or as a young boy, were you always into adventure, and did you have quests when you were little?
I don't know if I had quests per se. I was always a list maker. This is something that I noticed is actually really common in all the people I talk to. I really like to write things down, and I like to write down my tasks and write down my ideas and outlines, even in rough, form. I really like to kind of, break things down into small little, projects or things. So I think it was maybe a value that I had, and then I kind of grew into it more. And then I started traveling, and it wasn't like I went to my first country and I was like, oh, I'm going to go to like, the rest of every single 193 countries in the world. I kind of gained confidence as I had some experience. That was something else that I saw with a lot of different people is they started with a small vision and they kind of came to a bigger one later on.
Interesting. So if I heard you right, and please correct me if I'm wrong, when you started traveling to different countries, it wasn't necessarily like, well, obviously because you might have done some travel, you did some travel
Right.
earlier on in your life, but then as you got that appetite whet for travel, you saw an expanded vision and said, hey, why don't I set this adventure goal for myself to see every country in the world? So it wasn't even like you started off like, this is my quest. It's
Correct.
something that
Absolutely.
evolved.
Yes, absolutely. I had no idea that this would become something that would consume my life, for more than 10 years. I just started traveling. I loved traveling. I lived in West Africa for a while, and through that I kind of gained some confidence and just really experienced the joy of being in different places. And then I think it was after I had been to like 50 countries or so, I was like, but still though, it's not that difficult. After I'd been to like 50-ish, I thought, let me set a personal goal because I always liked goals of trying to go to 100 countries, right? So that was the first one. And then I started getting close to that, and I thought, how can I take it up a level? Because if I'm just going to half the countries in the world, I could kind of cheat a little bit because, I could just pick the easy country. So yeah, it was something that I grew into totally. And I really, for me, what made a difference was combining travel with goal setting, combining travel with something specific, with structure, with a little bit of a container to it. And that just kind of changed the whole purpose and focus for me.
And you saw that with the people in the book as well, that they perhaps started something, their appetite got whet, and then all of a sudden a new, bigger world opened up to them that became this quest, this adventure they wanted to go on?
Yeah, yes, very often. And the specificity helped a lot. There's one story, Robin Devine in Omaha, Nebraska. She's a knitter and she's like super excited about knitting and she's an artist and she makes stuff and she had this project to make hats for people. And that's how it was at first. She was like, I'm just going to make hats. So she made hats for her friends and her family, just like a lot of knitters do. But then she had the idea of creating some specific structure to it. And at first she thought, I want to knit 1,000 hats. Like, what would that look like, et cetera. So she started working toward that and figuring out how much time and how much money and are there any other costs, all that. And then she decided to increase the goal and go to 10,000 hats. So now it's like her life quest, which I forget how many years it's going to take. You can actually go to her website and request a hat. There may be a waiting period. But eventually she's going to make 10,000 hats. So yeah, a lot of people, they found that their vision expanded, but then also as they worked towards something, they made it more specific.
So let's talk now about the link between quests or adventures that we can go on, if we want to call it that, and happiness. What did you discover, not only for yourself, but what did you discover from the stories of everyone that you interviewed for the book?
So for myself, when I started traveling and then pursuing the goal, I think it kind of came out of a sense of discontent or dissatisfaction, which doesn't mean that I was miserable. It's not like I was terribly unhappy. Like I had a good life. I had become an entrepreneur. I was working for myself. But yet I guess I felt like I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted more. And a lot of the people that we talked to who are in the book, they have the same kind of discontent. It was a yearning for something. It was a yearning to connect something broader in their life. They often were happy. They had good families. They had good jobs or good businesses or something. But yet, they had this desire to go further. And so that's where I saw really a link between the happiness and the pursuit of a goal. The pursuit of a goal, bigger than ourselves. I mean, something that is really significant, something that is really challenging. Because there's also a link between a quest and a challenge. I think, if your quest is like to go down the street and get coffee and come back, it's not really a quest, right? But when you combine it with something that's challenging, maybe hard, but also rewarding, that's where I think a lot of us can find happiness.
Have you seen that people are working on multiple quests at once, or do most people kind of choose something that feels challenging, meaty, maybe a little bit scary, totally exciting?
Sure. I mean, I think there's more than one way, to do it. And I'm always the kind of person that I like to work on a bunch of stuff at once. It's just my personality, for better or worse, right?
Yeah.
But I also think, a true quest, a true adventure, it does involve some kind of sacrifice. It does involve some kind of trade-off. I mean, if sacrifice is too heavy a word, let's say trade-off, to go to every country in the world, like, it was a pretty big thing. Like, there were a lot of things I had to say no to in order to say yes to that.
Like what? Like what?
Like what? Like building my career. I was on the road in Central Africa and Central Asia and Bangladesh and all these places 100 days a year often.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really work on my business very much, during that time. And that was okay. I had to say no to lots of opportunities, that are coming through. But I guess I really believed in this project. I really believed in doing it. And every time I would start to think, oh, maybe I shouldn't get on that plane and go to Chad or whatever. Like, no, I have to do, like, this is the root of everything. This is the foundation that everything else is built on. So yes, I think you can do a lot of stuff. But I guess also if you really believe in something, like, it's going to take something from you as well.
Yeah. No, I love this discussion because, especially, Chris, I love that you shared the self-doubt that can creep up. I think for anyone who's creative, if you call it a quest, or if it's a project,
Yep,
to
sure.
write a book, or if it's something to build a business or create something that's never been created before, and part of that adventure is you bringing it into the world. I think that self-doubt is so it's a topic that many of us, we don't like to talk about. I love hearing that you were like, okay, should I get on this plane to Chad? And I have all these different opportunities coming in. I mean, I'm working on another writing project right now, and I feel like daily the self-doubt voices are like, God, do you even know enough to write this? Does anyone care? It's amazing. Did you
Yeah.
notice that the other folks that you interviewed as well had those wrestlings with self-doubt in pursuit of their adventure or their quest?
Absolutely. Like almost all of them.
Yeah.
Almost all of them in different ways. And they spoke about it in different ways. People use different language. But everyone experiences that, I think. I think the bigger the challenge, maybe the more the self-doubt or the more the fear, but also maybe more the stirring that you have to do it. It's this idea that's not going to leave you alone. And I think a lot of them maybe were focused on the long term, and they're focused on the outcome. And they thought about that book that they wanted to write, or whatever it was. And they imagined having that out, and they thought about the people who would be helped by it. And that's kind of what got them through, that's the focus on the other side. I mean, I think a lot of them also, the other interesting thing I noticed they had in common was a lot of them had what I called an emotional awareness of mortality. And this also sounds kind of heavy, but it doesn't need to.
I love it. We talk
yeah.
about death on Marie TV all the time because I just think it's one of the most sobering, and it wakes you up. It wakes you up to value each moment. So not to interrupt, but let's talk about that. Let's talk about that reality of mortality.
Right. So the emotional awareness of it as opposed to the intellectual awareness. So I think everyone has an intellectual awareness of mortality, which I define in the book as just the fact that everybody dies, right? It's just a fact, right? But the emotional awareness of mortality is what I noticed a lot of these people talked about as I interviewed them, and they brought it up. Like, I didn't even ask, like, hey, what do you think about death? Like, it's just, it's not really the best interview question. But a lot of them talked about different experiences they'd had, either with like an accident that they'd have, or a close call that they'd had, or someone that they loved and lost, something that just brought them closer to the awareness that not only everyone else in the world is going to die one day, but I too, will die. And just the focus on the fact that life is short, we should live with urgency, that also kind of helps to overcome some of the self-doubt, I think. I think you think, okay, what really matters? I've got my own stuff, I've got my own anxiety, or whatever that thing is that most of us struggle with, but I also have this dream, and I also want more. I want to improve my life. I'm taking time to watch Marie TV because not just I want to be entertained, but I want to improve my life. I want to take steps toward that. So that's something else that people had in common that I think is actually helpful.
Yeah, and that's one of the values of this. It's one of the values of your book, and why I'm so happy that you wrote it and that we're sharing it today, is so many of us can find ourselves different parts of the journey struggling with, is there more? Is there more meaning? I think one of the most touching stories for me was about the young man who lost his wife. Can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Yes, this is a beautiful story. It is a sad story, as you alluded to, but it's also a beautiful story. This is a story of a young couple who met in South Korea, and he was American, she was Canadian, and they were both teaching English there. They met when they were really young, say young 20s or so, and they fell in love, and they were beginning to plan a life together. But unfortunately, she received a diagnosis of breast cancer. So they returned to North America, and she got treatment, but unfortunately, the treatment was not successful. And so she did end up going into hospice. And before she died, she had been writing a blog, And she had her own bucket list of all these things that she wanted to do in her life, and she began, working toward them. And after she died, which of course is very sad, Adam, the young man, decided to take on her quest for himself. And he decided to take over writing her blog and pursuing all of those items, on the list. So she wanted to knit, to learn how to knit. And so now, he learned how to knit. She wanted to run a marathon, so he began training for that. She wanted to volunteer in India, so he made a commitment to go and do that. And it is a beautiful story of how he adopted the legacy that she was preparing. So it's sad, but he also talked about how he found purpose in that. He found purpose in that through his own grief.
Yeah.
But then, also through his own foundation for the future. And he said that he had always been inspired by Megan. And had been inspired by this list that she had, so he hoped to follow it up.
It was so touching, and it brings tears to my eyes right now, because this life is so short and it's so fleeting, and it's just incredible. Anyway, really, really great story. So the other thing, I know travel, obviously huge passion of yours. It's a passion of mine, many folks in our audience. But if someone, let's say they don't have the means to travel, or perhaps some kind of huge, big adventure is just not in their cards right now. Let's talk about some of the smaller quests and the smaller adventures that people took that were equally as fulfilling and exciting and also really creative.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't even necessarily think that they were smaller, in some way. I feel like they're just different. And each of us has our own abilities, our own desires and capacities, blah, blah. So one of the stories I really, really liked is from Sasha Martin, who's in Oklahoma City. And Sasha had grown up overseas. I think her dad was working for some European company or something. So she had this international perspective, but then she met a guy and kind of settled down, and she had a daughter and wasn't able to travel much. But she also had a culinary arts degree. And she wanted to raise her family with an international perspective. She thought Oklahoma is cool, but I want, to have a broader worldview than just that. So because she wasn't able to visit every country in the world, she decided to make a meal from every country in the world. And this wasn't just a half-assed kind of thing. This was a once a week. She would devote lots of time to researching all these different recipes, and she would play the music from the country, and she would get the flag, and she turned it into a community thing, and people are starting to visit, right? And so her daughter, her daughter's first solid food is Afghan chicken, and her daughter's 3 years old now and is equally proficient with chopsticks or silverware or her fingers, depending on the food. And she's just talked about how it's made such a huge difference in her family, and also connecting it to people all over the world, because she's been posting her recipes online and sharing this whole journey with other people. So it's something that started also as a personal project, just like mine, but it became, much more impactful over time.
That was one of my other favorite stories from the book, because I really saw how fun that could be, and how this idea of having a quest that we can do it right from our own house, just using our imagination and our hearts and our desire to connect with something bigger than ourselves, and to stretch ourselves, which I think is really, it's something that I love doing in my own life, but I've never quite seen it put in the framework and the context of what you wrote, which is, again, why I'm so excited to have you on. So let's talk about something else that I thought was really interesting. We have a lot of multi-passionate entrepreneurs and a lot of creative folks in our audience who, again, we talked about, do lots of different things. And one of the things that struck me about this idea of a quest or an adventure and having a set container, a beginning, middle, and an end, was the power of finishing something. So many of us, I know certainly myself, you can get these great ideas and you kind of okay, I'm going to do yoga all the time, or I'm going to meditate every day, or I'm going to completely change my diet. And people take on so much, or they start a new project, they start a new business, they start a new product or program they want to put out into the world, and it's kind of half finished. How strong is the connection between having, a quest and the power of finishing? What can that teach us?
Well, one of the things I had to decide in the very beginning was, what is a quest, right? Because for the previous book, I'm writing about small businesses who got started without spending a lot of money. That's really straightforward, and I found a lot of people who fit that category. When I thought about quests, I kind of had to go back, okay, let's go way back, right? What is a quest in ancient days? There's someone who's going out to find the Holy Grail, or defend his village or something, or find this magic ring or something. And there's always a destination in mind. There's always an end goal, right? And it might take a long time. There might be like many different, trails and sidetracks and things that happen along the way, lots of challenge and transformation, et cetera, et cetera. But there is a goal, right? There is a destination, something that you're working toward. And so that's the framework that I used for my quest. And that's what most of the people that I talk to as well. It is very much about the process and the journey, but we are working towards something. We are hoping to reach that destination at a certain point. And I too work on lots of different stuff and often get sidetracked. But I think one reason the quest was successful and why it kept me focused is I knew where I was going, and I had 193 countries, and I could check them off as I went along. I put them in my Evernote, and I put a little X next to them, and I watched it grow, and I got tired at different points, but I could see the progress I had made, and it became like a cost-benefit analysis after a certain point. I'm like, well, I've got 100 countries already. Am I going to stop? I've got 150 countries. There's only 40 more to go or whatever. And so it helped a lot. Again, like with the other examples, making a meal for every country, she could have just said, oh, I'm going to make a bunch of foreign food, right? But not really that specific. And Robin's quest as well to make 10,000 hats. She always liked knitting, and she could just keep doing that, and it's fine, and that's fine. But she talked about how having the number gave her purpose. The other thing is I like deadlines. I think deadlines are our friends. If somebody ever gives me something without a deadline, I always tell them that's dangerous because it's just going to get pushed probably, right?
Yeah, I mean,
nature.
It's Parkinson's law too, if I'm accurate on that one. I mean, work expands to fill the time allotted, and it will just expand forever and ever and ever unless we put some kind of container around it.
Right. So deadlines are great. That's why I like doing live events, because there's a deadline. I can't, if I've got like thousands of people coming into town for something, I can't just be like, oh, I need 2 more days, come back, or with a book launch or something. But for me, I chose my 35th birthday as the deadline, for the quest. And I chose that 7 years prior to finishing, right? And so as I got closer and there were different opportunities and I felt pressured in different ways, it kind of helped me to keep that in mind. I was like, no, I know I need to do like at least 20 countries a year, to achieve this goal. And if it gets hard, I just have to figure it out, right? So deadlines are our friends. Structure is our friends, right? Structure, deadlines, parameters. There's another quote that I liked in the book. This is from Elise Blaha-Kripe. She talked about how everybody's always saying like entrepreneurs and creatives should get out of the box, right? But for me, I want to get in the box. I want to define my own box. I don't want someone to be like, here's your box, right? I want to make my own box, but once I've made it, I want to actually have clear parameters and rules, and that's the scope of what I operate in, and I'm actually going to be more productive. I'm probably going to help the world a lot better if I'm in my box than if I'm just anywhere.
Everybody, get in your box. You heard it from Chris Gillibo, and of course my mind is going to places you don't want to go, but just get in your box, people, because it's good in there.
Sorry, that was a long thing.
No, are you kidding me? I liked it, and I can probably see the tweetable of this episode. Marie and Chris are telling you to get in your box, which
hashtag.
Is brilliant. Hashtag get in your box. So I have to comment on something else, though, because I think you and I are a little similar, and probably lots of folks that are listening right now. The absolute joy that comes from crossing something off your list, immense. In our team, we have these priorities docs that have very clear structure and guidelines for the things that we're working on, and so we can all see what we're doing. And the team, including myself, we get so friggin' excited when we cross things off. And I was thinking about this in the framework of Quest and how much fun that is when you've defined that container and you have something you're excited about working on and just putting those lines through. It's like really acknowledging the journey and the joy and looking forward to the destination, which is great.
I'm just starting to build my team, but I'm not sure how to keep everyone motivated and on track. We all work really hard, but maybe because we're virtual in different parts of the country and different time zones, it's feeling hard to get the team to really gel. What can I do to help people stay motivated and engaged and actually like working together? Thanks, Laura. Awesome question, Laura. I talk a lot about Team Forleo, so this is the kind of question that I get asked all the time. It's a big topic, team building, but today I'm going to share one kind of unorthodox tool that we've been using for years that helps people feel a real bond and a sense of connection. It was originally created for couples, but I use it for business. And no, it's not these.
Marie, you really don't have the keys?
I have no idea where they are.
That's great. Wonderful.
Okay, but seriously, the tool that we've used for years now is the blockbuster hit from the 90s. It's Gary Chapman's The 5 Love Languages. Now, since Gary came out with that book, he actually created another one that's specifically for the workplace, and it's called The 5 Languages of Appreciation. Now, we still use the love languages because we're touchy-feely like that. Now, here's the basic idea. Each one of us gives and receives love in our own unique way. We each have our own love or appreciation language, so to speak. There are 5 love languages: quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts, and physical touch. So the key to making another person feel loved and appreciated is to express love and appreciation in their primary love language. So on our team, one of the gals, her name is Kristen, we know that her primary love language is physical touch. So every time we get in person, it is a huge hug fest because we know that's how she feels most loved and appreciated. And conversely, Louise on our team, one of her primary love languages is words of affirmation. So all of us know that for Louise to feel truly loved and appreciated, we let her know verbally and in writing how amazing she is. Just think, if only Don Draper thought to do this with Peggy.
It's your job. I give you money, you give me ideas.
And you never say thank you.
That's what the money is for.
Hey, Don, I think Peggy's love language is words of affirmation. So now when anyone joins our team, it's the very first thing that we make them do. So how about you? Do you know your love language or your team's love or appreciation language? If you don't, you should go and check out Gary's site because he has a free test and it's awesome. We will put the links below. And of course, I recommend the books too because they are amazing. This will help you so much, not only to help build your team and help everybody gel together, but it'll really support every relationship in your life. In fact, one of my guy friends recently got engaged and I had told him, you gotta do this. You gotta make your woman do this. You have to do it. And he reported back a little bit later and he told me it was one of the best things they've ever done. But back to you and your team. I promise, if you give your team love and appreciation in their love language, you're going to help set them up to do their best work. They're going to stay fully engaged and they're going to love working with you over the long haul. You know, I think the late, great Stephen Covey said it best when he said, "Next to physical survival, the greatest need of a human being is psychological survival, to be understood, to be affirmed, to be validated, to be appreciated."
You share that you have the key to your own happiness, but the last place we look is ourselves. Whatever we want, whatever we think another person needs to do, we need to do. I feel like this is kind of the heart of the turnaround question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whenever our lovely mind is demanding that someone behave a certain way or do something for us, the genius of it is, what if I turn that around?
Yeah. It would be like you left the door open. You know, like saying, like let's say Stephen left the door open. You left the door open. Well, turned around, I left the door open. And when I feel the emotions it takes, you should, it implies he did it wrong, but I could just walk over and close the door and it doesn't stop me from saying, honey, did you leave the door open? Because for all I know, he didn't do it.
Yes.
Yeah. But there's something wrong with him. Turned around, there's something wrong with me. And then to ponder that, it doesn't mean it's true. It's just something to ponder. That's what these turnarounds are. They're not exchanging a negative belief for a positive. They're to ponder, to meditate in. Like there's something wrong with him. Turned around, there's something wrong with me in this moment. I was judging. I haven't, there's turned around, there's something right with him. And then to notice in the moment, there's a whole world there to be seen.
Yes.
When I look at my past behavior, I could see why people would avoid me, why they wouldn't, on and on and on and on and on. And of course, I'm going back a lot of years to see that. But those, my behavior was the teacher that brought me to this moment where life is really good and I appreciate it all.
Yeah. Yeah. Something else that you shared too, you said if you want world peace, bring peace to your world, not mine,
Mm,
yours.
mm,
We all live in
mm.
our own world. And that to me was one of those, especially like, like mind blowing moments, because I think so many beautiful, earnest, loving people want to do good for the world and
Mhm.
envision a world where it is more peaceful. And I loved when you shared that because once again, it's like, oh, this is my business, right? I need to do my
Yeah.
business if that's the experience of the world that I want.
Yes. I spoke with a person earlier today that billions of dollars.
Yeah.
It's like a genius,
Yeah.
and he has a lot of people that are pretty close to that, and all in that area, and they want to save the world, but we have to save our own world first. But while we're in that process, while we're in that, in the way that you and I have been discussing here, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop trying to fix the world. We're in some dire times, from what people are seeing. There's a lot of fear here.
Yeah.
But how much of that fear am I interjecting into that in my mind? Where am I contributing to that kind of fear? Fear slows us up. Peace is where we do our best thinking and our best action. But how can the unenlightened mind, a fearful mind, in other words, give it its best shot?
Right.
A fearful mind, we just, I'm kind of stumbling over words now, but you first take care of your life first, what you're thinking and believing, and then you make wiser choices as you get to know us. And I live in a world that is the extreme opposite of where I began when inquiry found me.
Yeah.
And I was agoraphobic weeks or months of being unable to even leave my bedroom. It was horrible. And I just wouldn't want anyone to have to suffer a moment of that. And even physical pain is either remembered or anticipated. But these are lofty words, but they're understandings that are true and valued and become deeper and deeper. Like we're on a path that we're responsible for, and what kind of grace is that? But save yourself and the world follows. It just works that way because it's your world. Your world is the one that matters. And I'm speaking, I'm saying that for all of us.
Hey there, real quick. If you're loving these tips, then you are going to love my free audio coaching program even more. It's called How to Get Anything You Want. And inside, you're going to learn 3 proven steps to turn any dream into reality. I am not kidding. You need to go download it now at marieforleo.com/subscribe. That's marieforleo.com/subscribe. I'll see you there. Happiness, it is somewhat a nebulous term, right? It's really difficult to define. And from what I've learned from you, it's a composite of things. So as you've shared that, while yes, we cannot really measure happiness, we can measure the facets of it. There are 3 big ones. Can you tell us about those?
Yes. So the first one and the most the most commonly used question is around something called life satisfaction. So a researcher will ask you, if you think of your life as a whole, with your best imaginable life being a 10 and your worst imaginable life being a 1, where would you place your happiness? And when that's done at the population level, you can get a really good reading on how well people and places evaluate their lives. Then there's a second kind of measure of happiness, where you get at how people experience their lives. And because you only remember about 2% of your life, you tend to remember your high points when you got married or had your first child, and your low points when you got dumped by a girlfriend or boyfriend, or when your grandma died, and what happened in the last 24 hours. Asking people to remember their lives isn't a perfect way to measure well-being. But if you ask people in the last 24 hours, how much have you smiled? How much have you felt joy? How much have you felt stress? And you do that a few times, you get a pretty good snapshot at how people experience their life. That's called positive affect. And then there's a third kind of happiness measurement that asks people how often they're able to use their strength to do what they do best. That's in the academic parlance, how you measure purpose. So when you ask those questions among populations around the world in a uniform way, you can start to see, number one, where people are happiest in these three measurements, and number two, the things that associate with happiness or correlate to happiness.
And so tell us about some of the happiest places.
So Blue Zones of Happiness, in the cover story I wrote for National Geographic, sought to illustrate each of these three types of happiness. So we chose Singapore as the place to best demonstrate life satisfaction. So Singapore is a place where it's very easy to live out your values. It's very secure. It's a place that will appeal to the type of people who like success laid out in a very simple path. Go to the right school, get the right job, keep your head down, work hard. And at the end, you'll have status, you'll be financially secure. And that's a type of happiness. Yeah. It's mostly happiness in the rearview mirror. I think I'm happy, therefore I must be. In Costa Rica, specifically Cartago in the Central Valley, that's a place where people are experiencing their life very well from day to day. It's a high valley where the temperature only varies 10 degrees a year, between about 65 degrees and 75 degrees. Best coffee in the world. But more importantly, it's a place where the cities are designed so you're bumping into people with some frequency all the time. You go to the market, you run into the people selling you your fruits or your vegetables or your fish. The towns are built, the streets are built for human beings and not just cars. One of the biggest predictors of whether you'll be happy on a day-to-day basis is how many hours of face-to-face time you have with people you like. The happiest people in the world are interacting face-to-face about 7 hours a day. And Cartago has an environment where it's easy to do that. And then we chose northern Denmark, a place called Aalborg, to exemplify purpose, because Denmark's a place where healthcare is taken care of. Nobody has to worry about what happens if I get sick. Education's taken care of. Nobody has to worry about, can I save enough money to put my kid through college? Because kids now go to college, so they get paid to go to university. And will I be okay when I'm old? So those are big drivers of whether or not you take a job. It's also a place where status is not really celebrated. So you get no extra credit for wearing Prada or driving a Mercedes. In fact, it's kind of frowned upon. So people aren't taking jobs for status or health insurance. They're taking jobs because they love it. In America, only about 30% of workers actually like their job. This comes from Gallup data. In Denmark, it's about 80%. They're working 35 hours a week. They're doing jobs suggestive of flow, furniture design, architecture, niche technology. That's what they excel in Denmark. So these are jobs that really engage people's passions and their artistic abilities. It's not so hard that they give up, and not so easy they get bored. They work 35 hours a week, take 6 weeks of vacation, have plenty of time for the social interaction we know is really fundamental when it comes to happiness.
And was it interesting for you, like being energetically in these different places? Could you feel just for yourself, like, whoa, when you're in Costa Rica, that sense? I mean, I've been to Costa Rica several times. And what's the saying of the country? It is viva...
Pura vida.
Yeah, exactly.
Pure life.
Yes.
Yes. I would say more so in Costa Rica, but than the other places, because you really have to live there. It's not quite as easy to go there. I mean, you get, of course, you get the vacation effect. You know, I don't have to work today, for crying out loud.
Yes.
But the sun's shining and the beach is near and all those things. So that's a different experience than actually living there. And the reality, we find that most when it comes to happiness, most people are misguided or just plain wrong. In fact, we more often than not aim at the wrong target when it comes to lasting, authentic happiness. And if you really want to understand those places, it can't just be a facile, well, I went there, I felt happy, and people danced and we went to parties. That's not it.
Yeah, let's talk more about that though, how people are aiming at the wrong things, because I've read that you suggest we think about happiness more like a retirement portfolio and that it should be balanced.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, people to ask me what's the secret of happiness, and that's like going to your doctor and say, "Doctor, I'm sick, make me well."
Right.
You have to do some diagnostics. So, for example, we talked about life satisfaction, how you experience life, and purpose. You want those three to be balanced.
Yeah.
You could work 70 hours a week and make $250,000 a year and feel financially secure, and your friends are all impressed with you, but your day-to-day experience is crappy. That's not happiness, even though you've kind of checked all the boxes in life. So we actually have on our website, bluezones.com, we have a true happiness test, which is a diagnostic we did with the University of Pennsylvania that will ask you about 40 questions to be able to diagnose you. Are you experiencing mostly life satisfaction or experience happiness or lack of purpose? And we assess where you are in those three, and then we give you a prescriptive. It's free, by the way.
I love it. We'll make sure that we include that in the blog, and we'll include that in the email as well. So according to science, we humans have control of about 50% of our happiness, right? The other 50% is about genetics and luck.
Yeah.
So lasting happiness from your perspective is something that everyone can create. So how do we start to take charge of that 50%?
I think to realize that, so 50% is genetically prescribed for each of us. So we all have what I call a set range. So imagine scale 1 to 10, and you're a really happy person. And on a good day, you're a 10, and on a crappy day, you're a 6. But somebody down the street who was born with a bad set of genes, on a good day, they're a 6, and on a crappy day, they're a 2. So you have control of where you are within your set range. You might be able to get out of it a little bit, but really you're sort of, for lack of a better, hormonally endowed with a certain capacity for happiness. So I argue in Blue Zones of Happiness that if you want to maximize your set range, you want to shape your environment so you're more likely to be happy. And now there's big data around happiness. Gallup, the Whirlpool World Database of Happiness, for the book in the National Geographic article, we sucked in 100 million data points and did the regression analysis to find out exactly what you can do to stack the deck in favor of happiness.
Tell us, Dan. Tell us.
Well, there's a number of things you can do. So if happiness were a cake recipe, it's important to, you need food and shelter and education. That's, by the way, why Bhutan is not a very happy place. Bhutan is number 91 in the world. Everybody thinks Bhutan's a happy place. It's not a happy place.
They did a good marketing campaign, right?
They did a good marketing campaign, and they do deserve credit for coming up with the idea of gross national happiness. Mm-hmm. So if you can't measure, you can't manage it. So they get big kudos. They just don't have an economy or distribution a scheme so that enough people have the basics in life. So you need the basics. You need education. You don't need to have a doctorate degree, but it's really important to have at least a high school and some college to maximize your happiness. You need satisfying work. You're more likely to be happy if you are in a committed relationship than not. Having kids, by the way, is a mixed bag. You want to have a feeling of giving back. But the most important ingredient, the ingredient with the most variance, is where you live. Hmm. And we know that because watching immigrants move from Moldavia, an unhappy place in the Soviet bloc country, to Copenhagen, and when we watch people from unhappy places in Africa and Asia move to Canada, which is a happy place. Those immigrants, they don't change their sex, their gender, they don't change their education status much, they don't change their genetic endowment, they don't change their sexual preference. They're the same people. And all they do is move, and within 1 year, they report the happiness level of their adopted home. So Moldavia, for example, the average score is 3, they move to an 8.
Wow.
And in Canada, they move from a 4 or 5 to an 8. So, and all they do is mold. So your environment, where you live or how you shape your surroundings is the biggest, most important, and most impactful thing you can do to favor your own happiness.
Let's talk about that for a second, because we have viewers, excuse me, in 195 countries around the world. And there will be a certain portion of people listening to this who hopefully will dive into all of your work. This is what I want them to do. And they may discover, you know what? I am going to pick up and move. I'm not a tree. So they might be able to, and we'll talk about more about what makes for a great environment in terms of where you live. But I know there are many, many other thousands of people watching go, okay, well, if I can't pick up and move or necessarily change where I live, at least right now, let's talk about some of those shapers of our immediate environment and what we can do to stack the deck in our favor.
Yes. So the first and foremost is curate a group of friends around you. We now know that unhappiness and loneliness are contagious. So if you sit around with people who are unhappy and are lonely, I'm not telling you to abandon your old friends because they need a hand, but if you're continuously doing that's going to be contagious. You can actually measure that. A guy named Nicholas Christakis has found that. You want 3 to 5 friends who, number one, you can have meaningful conversations with them. And I mean conversations of the heart, not just sports or celebrity. These should be friends you can call on a bad day and they'll care. That's kind of the litmus test. If my chips are down, are they still going to be with me? And number 3, you actually have to like them. And you want to spend face to face. There's no really good research showing that connecting on Facebook or Snapchat or something is the same as what we're doing right now.
Yeah,
connecting face to face. Number 2, when it comes to your financial life, the impact of financial security is about 3 times more powerful than consumption. What does that mean? That means if you just got a raise or there's some money left over in your paycheck, over time, you're actually better off paying down your mortgage, buying insurance, joining one of these automatic savings plans than you are going out and buying a new pair of shoes or a new gadget, because the luster of that new thing will wear off in 9 to 14 months, but financial security can last years, decades, or lifetime. So that's more important. I would say when it comes to your work life, this comes from more than 2 million surveys from Gallup. The biggest determinant of whether or not you like your job is not how much money you make, not how much recognition you get, not what your boss tells you about yourself. It's, do you have a best friend at work?
I loved this insight. Tell us more.
Yeah. So if you don't like your job or it's suboptimal, the making the effort to invite a coworker out, to organize the happy hour. I run these Blue Zone projects around the world, around the country, actually, about 40 cities. And we have over 100 workplaces that work with us. And one of the things we do, we actually create MOIs. We require, a MOI is a committed social network, and we get all the employees to come together, and we have a process by which we help them break into groups of 5. And then we organize them around either walking, a healthy activity, or eating Blue Zone's food, which is to say plant-based whole foods. And we find that about 60 to 70% of the time, these kids, or these workers stay together and become best friends.
It's amazing. I was talking about this to someone the other day, and I was telling you off camera that we have a virtual company. And so we don't see each other face to face every day, but Team Forleo, which we call ourselves, everyone really actually—
Where did you get that name?
I don't know. It was such a creative brainstorm. But everyone really likes each other. And one of the things that's been really satisfying for me as a boss is oftentimes when my team has break time or we go on vacation or, there's downtime, they get together in person on their own. And it makes me so happy because everybody winds up sending pictures and like, oh, I visited my friend here, but then I'm going to go see so-and-so. And it's such a great feeling to know how connected everyone is. And then when we talk with folks who don't have a culture like we have, and I see so much pain because they don't feel connected to anyone at work, it becomes really apparent because we're spending 8, 10, 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, if not more.
Most of your waking life.
Yeah.
Do you actually vacation together?
So last year, I took the entire company. They're off camera raising hands.
Yeah.
We actually all went on vacation together to Mexico, and there was absolutely no business meeting at all. We danced, we drank margaritas, we went we went in the ocean at midnight because we were like dancing and sweating and we're like, we need to cool off. But it was one of the best things that we've ever done as a company. And especially
That's so smart.
Yeah, it was really great. And we have memories that'll last a lifetime.
And then it also kind of sends the message, by the way, that your employees aren't just here to further the interests of the company, that you actually care about.
Oh yeah.
And
they know that.
And that's transparent. Yeah.
Absolutely. You guys, how do you feel? Do you know Mama loves you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mama, I like that.
Mama Marie. Well, I don't have biological kids. I have a stepson, but I call affectionately known as Mama Marie. So one of the other things I love about your perspective, because it's so fresh, that you're not a huge advocate of positive psychology techniques like savoring or appreciation or gratitude. Not that they don't work, but only in the short run. So tell me about why not that, and why, again, I agree with you, optimizing our environment is the way to go.
Yeah, I could not find any research that shows that positive psychology interventions have any long-term. It's a lot like a vegan diet. So there is indisputable evidence that eating a vegan whole food diet will help you lose weight and live longer. But people can't stay on that diet. Diets last on average, they work for 10% of people for 3 months. Within 7 months, you lose 90%, and within 2 years, you lose about 97%. I believe it's the same with these positive psychology interventions. Savoring, appreciation journals, gratitude, they're all great ideas, and they all work. I don't dispute the studies, but the studies are all done in 3 months or something like that. So when it comes to happiness, it's got to be a long-term pursuit. And I don't know of any way to establish gratitude for more than a year.
Well, I think most of us as humans, if we look at our own lives, and again, I have to say this because I know my audience and I know they're going to be like, no, Dan, especially because Chris Carr and I are best friends. She's going to be like, vegan is not a diet, it's a lifestyle. So yes, everyone, for those of you who have adopted and you eat vegan as a lifestyle, we love you. What Dan's talking about is research and it's slightly different. Again, I have this ability to hear people's what they're going to say in advance.
What are they worried about?
Remember when you said, well, the vegan diet, like people only do it for a short amount of time. I know people that way.
Yeah.
That's their life. Like Chris Carr, for example.
Right. So I just mean, yes. And you're right. Vegans is more of a moral way of living, ethical way of living. But I should say just getting on any diet, trying to adopt a new diet. And there are hundreds of them that come on the scene every year, and there's been no diet in the history of the world that works for more than 2 or 3% of the people for over 2 years. So trying to ask somebody to remember to do the right thing and to have the discipline to do the right thing by themselves will almost always fail.
Yeah, and that's why I like this idea about really setting up your environment to nudge you. We were talking again before we had the cameras rolling. I spend some of my time here in New York City, and I also spend some of my time in Los Angeles, specifically in Venice, where I ride my bike a lot. And I notice how happy I am there because I'm riding my bike, I'm walking around, there's less congestion typically than there is here in New York City. And I think it's just so interesting that rather than like striving to be happy, I feel like what your perspective is kind of laying out for us is like the lazy way to do it, in the sense where if you set up your environment, it almost starts to happen automatically.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And by the way, when you're in Venice, there is something called the sun bonus. So if you control for everything else, if you live in a sunny environment, you're about 5% more likely to be happy.
That's what it is for me.
and also if you live by the water.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually water or mountains. So those two, you're just more likely to be happy. And it may be because water is serene, or it may be because you get to swim, or it may be because you like sunsets. But moving to a sunny, beachy area stacks the deck in your favor.
One of the things I love in the Happiness Project is that you actually give us a fantastic set of questions to consider designing our own. So I just want to read the first 3, if that's okay.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I have some questions. So what makes you feel good? What activities do you find fun, satisfying, or energizing? You guys will probably put these up on the lower third, and so you can write them down for yourselves. What makes you feel bad? What are sources of anger, irritation, boredom, frustration, or anxiety in your life? And then this third one, Is there any way in which you don't feel right about your life? Do you wish you could change your job or city or family situation or other circumstances? These are such brilliant questions.
Oh, good. Yeah.
I love them. Are these, like, I feel like these are the kind of questions that you can ask yourself at any time to launch any type of self-improvement project on a small scale or a large scale. Do you still ask yourself these questions?
No, absolutely. And it's interesting because I think you kind of need everything. Like, you need more fun and enjoyment and pleasure, and like a life where you just experience nothing negative would not be happy. But on the other hand, I think there's this, because of the negativity bias, we experience the negative more strongly.
Yes.
So like, at least I think for my happiness project, it was much more about trying to bring up the negatives.
When you say bring up the negatives,
like, okay, like I'm not getting enough sleep, so I'm really exhausted. So how do I get that? How do I fix that?
Yep.
How do maybe I feel guilty because I was losing my temper with my kids all the time. What do I do so that I'm not losing my temper? But I think you're right. It's a constant process because everything's always changing in our lives, and so you have different challenges, and maybe you get one thing under control, so then you kind of want to up your game or try something different.
Yeah, I think these questions are amazing. Let's talk about the arrival fallacy from Happier at Home. You write, one of the persistent follies of human nature is to imagine true happiness is just out of reach. You share, we start off with, you're too young for that, or it's too soon for that, or I'll have plenty of time for that later. But it quickly becomes, it's too late for that, or I'm too old for that. And I'm wondering if we can talk into that and also share about waiting too long to make a snowman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the arrival fallacy is just this idea, like when I get my house, I'll be happy. When I publish my book, I'll be happy. When I lose 30 pounds, I'll be happy. When it's, the new year, I'll be happier. Or my version of the arrival fallacy is to think, well, everything will calm down. Everything's going to calm down after the holidays. Everything's going to it's going to be really quiet in the summer.
BS, right?
And it never calms down. It never gets quiet. It never does. And so I think but it's this idea that, or it's another way that's kind of a version of the arrival fallacy. It's not the same thing, but it's very tomorrow focused, is to think, well, this will be easier tomorrow.
Yes.
Oh, starting in 2020, I'm going to exercise. Starting, on my birthday, that's when I'm going to start like really watching the budget, because it always seems like things are going to be easier tomorrow.
Yeah.
You're going to be happier tomorrow, and everything's going to be easier tomorrow. You're going to have more willpower. You're going to have less like temptation. You're going to have less time pressure. No, it's like, whatever tomorrow is, it's probably a lot like today.
Yeah. So I think maybe the fix is catching ourselves when we are falling into that fallacy.
Yes.
And recognizing now's the time.
Yes. It's interesting. There was just an article in the Wall Street Journal. It was talking about there are many, many more people living single today than there ever have been. And one of the things they said, that to be happy as a single person, one of the things you have to do is to be like, if I want to buy an apartment, I should buy an apartment now. If I want to go to Mexico, I should go to Mexico now. Like, don't wait for some kind of future when you're going to have a different kind of situation. Really do everything that you can to feel as happy as you can right now, and to take it and to like live your life the way you want, rather than thinking like, well, I'm sort of in a temporary position right now.
Yeah.
Your life is your life. Like, do what you want right now, and then tomorrow, who can say?
And can you tell us the story about the snow and the snowman? With this, it was around you watching the snow. Do you remember this? I'm probably trying to jog your memory.
Yeah.
You were watching the snow out the window.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
No, I experience this all the time. In fact, I was thinking about this for my next book, actually, which is this idea of like, I don't need to experience to the uttermost the weather conditions, because there's always going to be another time. Like, there'll always be a snow to make a snowman, or there's always going to be a beautiful sunset. I don't have to go out there, or I don't have to go out and look at the moon, because I have my whole life to look at the moon. But then the snow goes away and you never made the snowman, or the whole winter goes away and you never made the snowman. And so I know, and I was thinking about that, with all of nature. It's like, I think, oh, I should walk in the park and make sure that I see all the cherry blossoms. And I'm like, oh, well, I'll wait a week or two. It's like, okay, they're not going to be there in a week or two.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I could see them next year. It's like, there's no guarantee.
That's right.
That's
really that big one. There's really no guarantee. This week here in the US, we are celebrating one of my favorite holidays, Thanksgiving. Come on, guys. Can we hear it for some Thanksgiving? Now, here's the deal. I love this holiday because it's not about material gifts. It's about friends, it's about family and connection, and food, glorious food. Do you guys know how much I love to eat? I love to eat. Now, As you may know, a typical practice is that people sit around the Thanksgiving dinner table and they often take turns sharing what they're grateful for. Well, this season, I have got something new for you to try, and here's what's great. It's something that you can do all year long. So instead of saying what we're grateful for, what we're going to do is say what we appreciate. Now you might be thinking, hold up, Marie, are those really the same thing? And my response to you is, not really. So for our purposes, I want you to think about gratitude as the quality of being thankful. Now, most of the time when we talk about things that we're grateful for, we're referring to things we have in our life, like, I don't know, I'm grateful for my job, or I'm grateful for my husband. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Gratitude is a very transformative force, but appreciation is different. It's about recognizing something great in someone else and letting them know about it. And as Stephen Covey taught us, the greatest need of a human being is to be understood, validated, and appreciated. So this year, why not go around the holiday table and publicly appreciate each person? So talk about something specific that you love or admire about them. I want you to brag on them. Just give them a shout out. Kind of like this. Zach, I appreciate how creative you are, how thoughtful you are, how much you zhuzh the set of Marie TV, and most importantly, how you are willing to do the flash dance solo anytime, anyplace.
Jams. I appreciate your sense of humor, your laughter, and you, my friend, are a snazzy dresser. I appreciate how you laugh at my jokes when nobody else does. And that's the thing I care about the most.
Mashed potatoes, I appreciate you. I appreciate how creamy and fluffy and light and delicious and salty you are. You get better every year, and you make me feel so warm and fluffy.
Jams, that was really sweet, but can you make it to a person?
Mashed potatoes is my nickname for Eric.
Now, I think you get the idea, right? And if you're not used to giving people compliments, here is an appreciation template to get your creative juices flowing. First name, I so appreciate your blank. And here you're going to insert a quality like courage or tenacity or thoughtfulness or sense of humor. Next, you'll say, I say that because of blank. Then you're going to share some specific details and evidence of how they embody that trait or how they make people feel. If you put some thought into this, I promise you will find truth in this here tweetable. What you appreciate appreciates. Now, even though I love that statement, I did not make that one up. You know, it's one of those classic bits of wisdom that's almost impossible to trace back to a single source. But I do know that Lynn Twist, the author of one of my favorite books called The Soul of Money, has done a brilliant job spreading this idea too. And here's what it really means to me. You know, the grass is always greener where you water it. And this is especially true in our relationships. The more you can express genuine appreciation for people in your life, the stronger your relationships will become and the more fulfilling your life will be. How do I deal with the guilt? Let me explain. I've recently shifted my business focus to an area which I have strong skills and which I greatly enjoy. During work the other day, I found myself very, very happy. That stopped me in my tracks, and suddenly I was full of guilt. Whether it came from someone in my family, my nanny, my school teachers, or just being raised female in this society, I have a lot of baggage around enjoying my work. If this new path works out, I could conceivably not only make enough to support myself, but to allow my overworked, generous, and supportive spouse to shift to a less stressful career too. I find myself wondering, with so many people in the world forced, many literally, to do work they hate just to survive, what gives me the right to pursue work that feeds me mentally and spiritually as well as financially? Please help me get to a positive perspective on this so that I can move forward. Your fan, Cynthia in Virginia. Cynthia, this is a beautiful question. You have a lot of empathy. You're a very caring person. That means you actually give a damn about the welfare of others. That is a beautiful thing. But, and this is a big but, obviously, as you shared, this guilt thing is tripping you up. And if you don't get it handled, it could really screw up your happiness and your success. Now, I have a few ideas that can help. Number 1 is your misery doesn't serve anyone, and it certainly doesn't help those people who don't have many options right now in terms of their livelihood. It's not like you being miserable at work or feeling guilty over loving your work is somehow creating more work options, because it's not. You need to wake up and break this association that you have with guilt and it being useful. Guilt is not useful, it's wasteful, it's indulgent, and it does not make you a better or more caring person. You're assuming that misery loves company, and that may not be true. Give them some credit that they don't want more people suffering alongside of them. And also give some credit to the people that don't have the options that you have, but they make the best of it. Basically, it's time to wake up and smell the happiness coffee. In fact, you know what? I'm going to have myself a cappuccino right now. This is with almond milk, right? Number 2, you can't give away what you don't have. So if you want to make a difference in this world on any level, you can't give that which you don't have for yourself. And when it comes to the important things like love and compassion and happiness, you have to cultivate that within so then you can extend it to others. Number 3, happiness is not a limited resource. So unlike resources like time or water, there's no limited quantity in happiness in the world. So stop thinking that you're going to use it all up. In fact, the more happy you are in your work, the more it opens up that possibility for others. And I like this idea so much that we are making it a tweetable. Happiness is not a limited resource, so help yourself and there will be plenty left for everyone else. Number 4, who is anyone to be happy? So Cynthia, in your question, you wondered out loud, what gives me the right to pursue work that feeds me mentally, spiritually, and financially? And I say, what gives anyone that right? I mean, what if anyone who's ever made a significant positive impact said that? And what if we all said that? It would all be like, great, let's all be miserable at work. Yay! Thanks, Cynthia. Just kidding. Number 5, you want to turn your guilt into giving. So this may be the only redeeming quality of guilt in this situation. So if you don't have an active practice of giving back to others, whether that's money or time or mentoring or your community or whatever, you need to get that practice going and make it a permanent part of your life. So this isn't about relieving guilt. This is about expressing the wholeness of who you are as a human being and living that fully in your life. One thing that I found to be true is the more you give, the more you live. That's why we have our Change Your Life, Change the World initiative. Now, if this floats your boat, Cynthia, you need to come and join our Kiva lending team. It's awesome. Little link is below. This way you can make a direct impact on people's livelihoods all over the world. So, of course, I'm not attached to where or how you give, but if inside you feel like you're not doing enough right now, I want you to turn your guilt into heartfelt giving.
Oh my goodness, you made it all the way to the end. Good on you. But let's not stop here. Keep the momentum going. You're going to love this next episode. Click it, watch it now, and I'll catch you there.
You can be utterly, completely head over heels in love with some parts of your life and absolutely be totally unhappy in other parts. And I don't think we should ever just freaking settle.